Hey folks, Luke here for That's Just Gaming, and I'm back with another entry in my diary of an Indecisive Gamer. There's a lot to get through this week, so without further ado, let's get stuck in. First thing I played this week was Warhammer Age of Sigmar Champions. Much like last Thursday, our resident trading card guy, Paolo, and I decided to head to Firestorm Games, our local gaming centre, to play a few games with the decks that we had picked up last week. I had made some minor alterations to my deck, nothing spectacular, just swapping out a couple of units and spells. The biggest change came from replacing both Skeleton Warrior Champions with a pair of Hell Knights. We ended up only playing 2 games, the first of which started slow for me. I didn't have much in the way of damage output in the cards I was getting, while Paolo was able to half my life points in about 4 or 5 turns. I did mount a bit of a comeback when better cards were starting to come my way, but the damage already done proved to be too much and I lost. After that game, we both made alterations to our decks. I put in some more big monsters, an extra zombie dragon and a terrorgeist, and tried to really focus on the risen keyword in order to create a bit more synergy in the deck. The second game we played seemed to go on for ages. We got stuck in this situation where every time one of us was dealt damage, we were able to heal a chunk of it. However, in the end I was able to claim the victory due to a nice little combination I stumbled upon that included a Hell Knight, a Skeleton Standard Bearer, and a Zombie Dragon, that basically allowed me to keep getting the Zombie Dragon back in my hand, while also speeding up his damage output. Unfortunately, we only had time for the 2 games, so once again we are tied for wins and losses. On Wednesday I received a message from a friend that I hadn't really spoken to in a while, saying that they had just started playing Sea of Thieves and were really enjoying it. I told them that I haven't played it in a while myself, but I did enjoy it when I did, so we ended up arranging to play the game together that evening. In the afternoon though, I popped on my Xbox and loaded the game up in order to start a solo game to remind myself of the controls and all that stuff. I did a couple of Gold Hoarders quests, just searching for buried riches by solving riddles or using treasure maps, and it was a lot of fun. A bit slow and grindy when you're playing solo, but fun nevertheless. I'd also forgotten how much I love the sailing controls in this game, and how beautiful the scenery is. Parking became a bit of an issue at first. The sloop I was in was becoming quite battered, but I did get used to it again in the end. I didn't play for too long before leaving the game until the evening, but before I get to that, there's another game, sort of, that I need to talk about. So for the last 4 years, my friends and I have been playing NFL fantasy football, and Wednesday evening we had the draft of our 5th season. I have never won the league championship, despite being top of the league at the end of our first season, but nevertheless I'm determined to keep going. Going into the draft, I had done some research into which players were sought after this year, who was going into the 2018 season with injuries or suspension so I could avoid them, and all sorts of stuff like that. I didn't go super in-depth into it, it's just a friendly league after all, and I'll admit to feeling a bit underprepared going in. In the first 2 rounds I managed to pick up 2 players that I was after, New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara and New England Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski. After that though, I was kind of drafting on instinct. I kept seeing player after player that I was hoping for just disappearing off the list. Immediately after, I felt like I had made some risky choices and wasn't really feeling confident about my team. However, the following day I received an email from NFL Fantasy Football giving me a grade on my drafting performance. Turns out they think I did a great job. With a grade of an A, they're predicting that I will end up at the top of the league with a projected 12 wins to 2 losses. And now I do realise that these predictions can't take into account the way that teams will change over the course of the season, and believe me, they will. So obviously I'm not going to take this email as a foregone conclusion. However, it did inject a bit more confidence into my team for me. I'll be keeping you up to date on match results and any team alterations I might make over the course of the season, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel in order to stay up to date with the videos. After the fantasy football draft, I returned to Sea of Thieves as planned to join a couple of friends on a voyage in the recently added ship type, the Brigantine. We had a lot of fun playing the game that night, made a lot of gold too. It is such a great thing about gaming that you can use it as a way to catch up with some friends. The one thing that really sticks out from that night though was a particular quest we were doing. We had set out from Ancient Spire Outpost and had 2 islands to visit in order to claim some treasure for the Gold Hoarders. Fortunately, the one island was directly north of the outpost and the other was directly south, so a plan was formed that we would go north first. We travelled without event to the next island and found the treasure with little resistance, and as an added bonus we also found a second chest. We set sail again, heading south for the second island on our quest, and seeing as there were 3 of us, only 2 chests and an outpost on the way, we decided that rather than stop and sell the treasure, I would continue to sail the ship while the other 2 jumped overboard with the treasure as we passed the outpost to sell it, and use a mermaid to quick travel back to the ship. It was a great plan, with only one hitch. Shortly after they jumped ship, the seas went black, and I was met with the fearsome might of the Kraken. Alone on the ship, I had no choice but to try and fight the thing myself while I waited for the others to get back. I made a valiant effort, but eventually the beast killed me just as the others arrived. However, they were a touch late, and the ship was sunk before I could get back. We respawned at an island with a new ship and made our way to our original destination, admittedly a little wary of another Kraken attack, but it never came. We claimed our treasure in the end, and good times were had by all. We did also encounter a couple of amusing glitches along the way. There was some strange glitch where equipping your spyglass looked like this, and another glitch left me as a glowing skeleton on my friend's screen. It was a bit strange, but it didn't break the game, and we had a good laugh over it before just basically calling it a night. On Thursday afternoon, I was keen to play some more Sea of Thieves, so I loaded up a solo game and set out on my merry way. I must have played the game for about 10 minutes before I started getting warnings that the servers were going to be down for maintenance within 10 minutes, so my time was cut very short. Apparently they had applied an update that morning, and it was a bit broken, so they had to do emergency maintenance to fix it, so it was down for pretty much the rest of the evening. I decided instead to play Dead by Daylight that evening, and it was a pretty damn good night. I only played 5 games overall, obtaining a 4-kill game, 3 3-kill games, and a single 1-kill game, all playing as Myers, so I think I'm starting to get the hang of that killer, and he is fast becoming one of my favourites in the game. The only issue I had that night was coming up against a clearly experienced group of survivors who seemed more concerned with prolonging the game than they were with fixing generators. We did get a boatload of blood points for it, I think I got about 68,000, but being led around the same loops that were hard to counter was getting a bit boring. It wasn't too much of a problem though, and as I said, the night overall was pretty great. Sea of Thieves was back up and running for Friday, so myself and the 2 friends from the other night arranged to play it again that evening. I went on a bit early and started up a solo game in a sloop. At one point I found a whaling chest. I'd never seen one of these, but I had heard of them and knew that if I wanted to sell this thing, I was going to have to be prepared to bail out some water while the thing cried and filled my ship up with H2O. I did manage to sell it in the end and netted a pretty good profit, so I suppose it was worth the effort. I also reached one point where I was trying my best to find an outpost while carrying 2 skulls, a gunpowder barrel, a golden chicken and a pig, and bloody hell, I had a time of it. The first 2 outposts had galleons at them, so I refused to dock there. I didn't want to get robbed. I got caught in a storm on the way to a 3rd outpost and almost crashed into some rocks because of it, and to cap it all off, I was attacked by a giant bloody fish. However, my excellent sailing skills and calm demeanour, yeah right, I made it through and sold my loot for an amount of gold that really doesn't seem worth it in the end. After that, I was expecting my shipmates to turn up, so I set up a game with a galleon and started to prep the ship while waiting for them. The cannons were loaded, the lamps were extinguished, the outpost had been searched for supplies, and they still hadn't turned up. So I set up a voyage and started to sail the galleon alone, admittedly at a snail's pace, using only 1 sail in order to make it easier to control by myself. It was going pretty good too until I reached my destination of Devil's Ridge and started to get bombarded with cannon fire from the skellies on the island. Luckily my friends turned up in the nick of time and we got to safety and set about plundering the island. We made a fair bit of gold that night, which led me to buying a fancy new hat amongst other things. Oh, and we really did start getting good at docking the ship too. It's not perfect, but it's getting pretty damn close. Saturday was quite a busy day for me gaming wise, and it started out with an hour or so playing the Battlefield 5 open beta. I hadn't even realised the beta was out until I had seen friends playing it the night before. A quick disclaimer here though, I do enjoy Battlefield games, but I am not massively skilled at them, and so don't expect this footage to be any good. Regardless of my paltry skills, the game looked great and plays great. I think that the beta could have done with maybe a tutorial video, or at least a link to one that shows you the new features and how to use them, because there seems to be an expectation that you'll just figure it out, which isn't exactly easy in a game where you could be dropped at any moment. One thing I did notice was how much the Rotterdam map reminds me of the Amiens map from Battlefield 1. It's not identical obviously, but some of the small corner buildings and back alleys and the apartment stairwells look just like the ones in Amiens. I don't say this is a criticism either, it's just an observation. Overall though, the only thing I can really think to say about the beta as a whole is that, well, it's Battlefield. It doesn't try to break the mould, but they don't really need to. The beta is available until Tuesday, so I'm planning on looking up how to make use of building barricades and all other new features before trying another go at it, so expect more from me on this game next week. After Battlefield, I had a couple of games on Dead by Daylight, once again playing as Michael Myers. Neither game went well for me, and it looked as if my connection was a bit jittery at times, so after finishing my second game, I shut down the Xbox and went to reset the router. It was while doing this that I made a decision. And that decision was that when I went back online, I was going to play as a survivor. I know, it seemed hard to believe that I would finally do it after these last couple of months, but I did. So I loaded the game back up and went ahead and looked through the available survivors and chose to play as Feng Min. The one perk I chose for the game was one to help me out with any mistakes I might make fixing generators. If I failed a skill check, I had a 30% chance that the killer wouldn't be notified. And boy did I need it. I failed like 90% of the skill checks that popped up. I just couldn't seem to get the timing right. I only played the 2 games as survivor, dying in both. It was an interesting experience, but I just didn't find it as fun as playing the killer. The killers have so much more to keep them busy than the survivors. I didn't mind the chases, they were fun. The sneaking around looking for generators while keeping an eye out for the killer was fun too, but working on the generators just wasn't fun for me. And failing the skill checks as often as I was just frustrating. I know with some more practice I'll get used to it, but as I said, it just wasn't fun for me. I'd much prefer life on the other side. Lastly that night, I finally got around to playing For Honor after downloading it when it went free with Games with Gold. I'll be honest, the controls took a bit of getting used to, but I think I got the hang of it in the end. I think it's got such a unique playstyle that it plays really smoothly. I sided with the Viking faction to start with, so I ended up playing the tutorial as a Viking raider. I jumped straight into the fray after the basic tutorial though, because I'm a trial by fire kind of guy, and picked the Warden Knight to play as for most of my early games. I didn't do too badly either for my first attempt at the game and really quite enjoyed what I played. I stuck with the Warden Knight and played a variety of match types to try and get a feel for what the game has to offer. I'm so far impressed with what I saw and I'm very much keen to keep playing it. One thing I will say is that you really need to be spatially aware in this game, especially in games that include foot soldiers. It's so easy to get blindsided by other players when there are so many bodies on the screen, especially if you're already in a fight with one other person. I would really need to play more to fully form an opinion of the game, but right now it's definitely a new contender for my attention, because that's exactly what I need right now. And that's it for this week. Join me again next week for more about Battlefield 5 and the results of my first fantasy football matchup in the season, as well as finding out what else I'll end up playing. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is out Friday, so expect that to show up. Nevertheless, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any thoughts or questions about the games that I've played, or even just to tell me about the games that you've played. And if you can, subscribe to the channel. Nevertheless, as always, thanks for watching.